You're listening to Jack of All Trades, Master of Nothing, a podcast that celebrates those who do a little bit of everything. We bring together creative people who followed the unconventional path, pursuing multiple trades, sometimes at the same time. So get ready to be inspired, because as the saying goes, master of none is often better than master of one. Hey everyone, how's everyone doing this week? It's been quite a busy one on this front. Amanda, if I haven't said this yet, I'm kind of recording these out of order, but Amanda is my sister and she's our audio engineer on this season of Jack of All Trades, and she's been saving my behind with the workload of running another podcast. And she just delivered news to me the other day where she was like, Sarah, this sound quality kind of need to be doing X, Y, and Z things. So she's been gently reminding me back into the world of recording. So if you hear any sound clipping or distortion or anything, she's done her best. It's just me forgetting how to do everything. So sorry, listener. But the quality of the content that you're getting, I hope, is helpful to you. And let me tell you, as far as our next guest goes, with Stephanie Park, what a cool conversation. What a great way to catch up with an old friend. Stephanie and I met at school, which, you know, is how I meet most of my podcast guests that I bring on here. And she's currently touring with the cast of Hamilton, where she's playing Eliza. Steph will get into it, but had an early life in music with her family in Guam, and then moved to the States and was a very gifted musician from a young age. It's just really cool to talk to another music nerd about things such as harmonies and compartmentalizing parts of our artistry, the story behind how she kind of came to acting later, or even understanding her belt voice in the musical theater style so she could tackle the role of Eliza, is a really great listen for anyone who has yet to fully step into any desired artistic quality that they've been striving for. Steph is an amazing example of how just taking action and trusting the process, that we all arrive at different stages of our artistic expression, different stages of our career at different times. So for any listeners that feel that that is beneficial to them, sit back tight. I'm really excited for you to get to listen. Also, just a bit of a trigger warning throughout this episode. I'll put that trigger warning in the show notes, but we do get into some detail around eating disorders and mental health, specifically around being a performer, eating disorders in conservatory programs, BFA programs, the training grounds for actors, specifically musical theater artists. So if that feels like something that might be potentially triggering to you, just take a look in the show notes at where that timestamp is and be sure to skip over that. And without further ado, let's get into our conversation with Stephanie Park. Hi, Steph.
Hi, Sarah.
How are you?
I'm good. It's nice to see your face. It's been weird.
Like literally years. I mean, I don't even know when the last time we talked to this was, like, what, like
I don't know
20,
either.
2016 maybe? 27. I think I was back from tour.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I
Yeah.
think I was doing War Paint.
Yes, I saw that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, how the heck are you? Where are you right now?
So I am on a 2-week vacation from my contract. Yes. I'm towards the end of my contract. I'm playing Eliza on tour in Hamilton. And so I'm in Minnesota right now with my family. And, you know, family is like, it's the best of times and the worst of times.
Yeah.
They're like the most amazing people, but there's definitely a lot of trauma at all times.
Always. Stakes are high.
Yeah. But next week I'll have like kind of more of an actual vacation and then get back to the job.
Okay, cool. So for our listeners, Steph is on the national tour of Hamilton. Which tour is it? There's like a couple of them, right?
Yeah, it's the Philip tour.
And yeah, she said she's playing Eliza, so it's a pretty big freaking deal. She's a star. So we're here to hear about your life and kind of hear about how you got to this point, and also that you are a recording artist now with your boyfriend, right? And what's your group called there?
Yeah, so we're called Saffron Lips. The Instagram handle is just literally Saffron Lips, I think. But yeah, it's been a really cool. I know we'll delve into it a little bit more in a second, but it was the for both of us, it was the thing that we've wanted to do our whole lives, and never had time to do in our adult lives. I guess we're trying to make money and like having we've been fortunate enough to be employed and not like really have even if we weren't employed as adults, it's really hard to pursue something that doesn't make money and it especially costs money at
Yeah.
first for a long time. So the pandemic was kind of a blessing for us because that's how we're finally able to start from scratch and be beginners and learn all about, Logic Pro and write songwriting and all just everything, And so that's kind of how we started. And it's the first time I've written songs, even though it's something I've again wanted to do forever. Um, but it's cool. Yeah, we released our debut album in February, with a couple music videos and yeah, yeah. So that's the music group.
Okay, so like let's dive into your story a little bit, and even I'm going to be learning some things as we were friends in college, but like really didn't get to like really sit down and get to know some more intimate things about each other. Yeah, so let's hear like your early life, and you were been super musical. You come from a super musical, talented family, a relatively big family. Through four sisters. How many sisters?
I have two sisters, so there's three of us
Okay.
total. Yeah, my two parents, and yeah, they're it's a very musical family. I mean, last night we had our nieces over, and we of course did another talent show karaoke night, like just typical family night of just like karaoke. But basically, I was born and raised on Guam. I was there. My family was there for 14 years, but I was there for 11 years. And Guam is this tiny island, like 8 miles wide and like 24 miles long, or something tiny like that. So, in that island, I mean, my parents were super, super involved in the Guam Symphony Chorale and like obvious, like the church choir conductors, and so they had us like singing in church and singing in like the children's choir and like taking like JRB classes. It's like this modeling agency that somehow found itself in on Guam. I don't know. And so we were doing all that stuff, and um, we're pretty well known, I think, in that musical community on Guam, just because it is a pretty small pond. Um, my two sisters were great singers. My oldest sister is kind of like she's my biggest pop music influence. Like all of the music I listened to all until college was just basically what my sister told me to listen to. So that's like Alicia Keys, Mariah Carey, Justin Nozuka, like just those people. And then my other sister is much more classically based. So most of my training on Guam, like as a kid, was super classical. Like I didn't even know what musical theater was. I thought Broadway and musical theater was synonymous. I thought it was the same word. I didn't even know. We had like music binders. It was just labeled like Broadway. We didn't know that it was like like musical theater. Anyway,
Yeah.
so I grew up singing like mostly opera and dancing in ballet classes. I never acted really until like way later in my life. And then I moved to Colorado in middle school. It's so interesting because like obviously it was a huge culture shock going from like predominantly a Pacific Islander slash Asian population to like mostly only white people.
Yeah.
There were no people of color where I grew up in Colorado. But the biggest thing I would say when it comes to like the arts was like musical theater was a big thing in middle school and high school. And I was like, oh, what is this? And it's just crazy to think about that like in sixth grade, I felt so behind as an actor. And that feeling carried me all the way through my mid 20s, like way past college, I would say, of just like constantly feeling behind as an actor, which is just like hilarious. Um, but yeah, I like kind of I still was more of the classical route. I was like more like the choir president, like always the choir person. Like I would always do like the all state choirs, all state jazz choirs. I do like classical singing competitions, and before I went to CCM with Sarah, where we majored in musical theater, before that I was an opera major just for a year at
Oh yeah, I
Northwestern.
forgot about
Um,
that. You went to Northwestern.
yeah,
Okay, yeah, that's cool.
yeah. And then I transferred to CCM just because I knew I wanted to do musical theater. And again, I had that like feeling of being behind as an actor. And I was like, I need 4 years of training, just like seriously doing musical theater. So yeah, that's kind of my whole upbringing. I didn't really pursue musical theater until I went to CCM
Yeah.
basically. So I was never like the lead in high school plays or anything. And I remember like going to CCM and like everyone was a star of their hometown, and I was like, wow, I'm a nobody. Like I don't know, like I've never played a role.
Yeah.
Like I
I
don't
felt like
know.
that too. Like I like grew up kind of similar to you. Like I did a lot of the choir, a lot of classical. Well, not really. I honestly wasn't that trained. I got more serious voice lessons like right before I had the audition circuit, and
Mm,
learned a little bit more about like accessing my soprano, and then that kind of popped out of nowhere so that I had
yeah,
these two a super heavy chest belt where I was just pulling all this weight up, and then soprano sound. So but yeah, like having, I mean, it's so beneficial actually now working, like I've realized to have such a musical background in that sense that it's like a discipline of
for sure.
understanding it and appreciating ear training and sight reading and theory. I mean, you play piano too, right?
Yeah, yeah. My mom had me in piano all the time
Yeah.
too. So in terms of like classical training, that was most of it. Like sight reading was huge for us. I will say I'm a very good sight reader. It's like I haven't played piano in a long time really, but it's still a skill that I have. Like I can definitely generally understand what the accompaniment will be for any song that I have sheet music to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. I mean, I don't know about you, but with that All State Choir, man, I used to like get so bored. They had me on alto, which is ridiculous because like
Yeah.
not an alto, like maybe
Yeah.
bordering, definitely lyric soprano, but that's fine. Anyway,
For sure.
for sure, but that's okay because it teaches you your ear and your harmony and your pitch. Like, and I know just knowing you and your voice, it's so beautiful. I'll put a snippet of one of your songs in the middle of this episode so people can hear it, but just it's so angelic and easy, and you'll hear how precise Steph is in her pitch and the accuracy in the runs. It's like just brilliant. It's like a delicious butter that is like
Oh my
just
god. So
streaming
sweet.
through your ears. It's so good. But you'll hear, the accuracy that comes from studying that kind of music. But I don't know if you like during choir, like, did you get bored and like switch parts and
Oh
like,
my all the time. Yeah. Well, so it's funny, like when it comes to choir singing, that shit helps a lot. Like blending and
yeah,
acapella music, just anytime you sing with other people, it's such a specific skill set of like learning how to blend, learning how to like harmonize and kind of like if you can tell the whole thing is flat, just like slowly lifting us all up together back to the pitch, like
yeah,
you know all of that. But most of my choir training happened like because in Korean church, my mom was the conductor,
mm,
and so she would have like it's a new song every week. We'd sing hymns. We get bored. We would just like sight read the alto line for the second verse, the tenor line for the third verse, bass line for the fourth.
yeah,
Just like constantly, just for fun. Like I'm a freak about what is fun to me. Like sight reading is fun.
yeah.
DDR is fun. Do you know DDR?
I like the dance, like
Dance
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 Revolution.
Revolution.
Yes, yes.
I'm saying it because like that's basically sight reading. Like it's basically like
Press the button.
yeah, you're like go and now and ga 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 ga. Like it's like
Yeah, it kind of is that way because when I don't know how you feel about like your pitch accuracy, but I feel like a little bit of a freak because I even try to teach my students this, but it's like I view it as like kind of like pressing a button. Like you have a piano, right? And when you're starting piano, you don't have your brain doesn't have to work. You just press the next thing. But
yeah,
in your body, right? It's your brain is creating that musical library, and so like with your sight reading, how do you do that? Because I just memorize what it feels like and then I just play that note. Like that's literally how I associate that is like I remember what this note feels like
yeah,
and then I just sing it as opposed to like thinking like those intervals. That's too heady for me. I just do
yeah,
it. Like how do you do
yeah.
that?
I guess actually the same thing as you. I watched some videos that you posted a while back of like teaching. You were teaching voice lessons, and I was just so impressed with how you were explaining the exercises. It's like
Oh,
whoa, like
thanks.
Because when it comes to like, I don't even know how to explain how I just like read things. I guess it does feel like just like that's an A, like nah, that's an A, nah, like you just like.
Yeah.
But I think also because I have a background in piano, I have really good relative pitch. Like
Right.
if you press a note on the piano, I'll know what it is. And then
Right.
if you ask me to guess a note, I'll probably be around the half key, or at least a half, or at most a half key
Yeah.
off.
Same.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I guess that's similar to you.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
kind of funny because then if I mean, I've admitted this to myself. I'm like a very like I like to show off sometimes. I know it's a thing. Everyone does. You got a skill. I love to do it. I'm not gonna be
yeah,
ashamed of that. You know what I mean?
for
But
sure.
sometimes if it's like that's like the annoying music person when someone like plays a key and you're like, that's an A, right? And then the people are like, okay, like they say like perfect pitch, and I'm like, no, bitch, like I'm half off. I'm like off half the time,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it's not perfect. But like, how do you like trick people sometimes into thinking you have perfect pitch, and you're like, well, actually, it's not perfect because like sometimes it's a half step off. So it's like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, and most people like people just think it's perfect pitch, but it's definitely not.
no.
Like I'm not able, like people can hear the wind blow and be like, that's an A flat.
Oh
Like
my god,
that person.
I can't. I can't with that.
But it's
That's
also
in Dorian mode.
yeah,
Like you're like,
exactly.
okay,
um, but it's honestly like as you said, it's a skill set, right? So like it's not something I've trained in a long time because like you can sit by the piano for 10 minutes and be like, just kind of like start guessing and like you would kind of get it if you do that every day or like with some repetition. So I don't know where I'm at with that, and I'm not around people right now who like really care or think about anything like music theory, sight reading,
yeah,
and pitch. Yeah,
yeah,
really
yeah.
good.
Yeah, but it's cool. I mean, this is I guess for my next project. This is second season to something I started in the pandemic, but for my next project I'm thinking of linking my like website to specifically voice
Mm.
podcasts for singers and for teachers to really get into the experts of like, okay, what does this mean to you and how do you view singing? So that's in the future, the far future, but ideally, so that's why it's fun for me to like hear you talk about that because it's like as a secret nerd in the musical theater realm, like for the listeners in musical theater, you don't actually have to learn how to read music, which I don't understand,
No.
but
Yeah.
there's so many people that don't know how to do that. So when you actually do have musical skill like Steph does, and it's incredible, like you're kind of a little bit of a freak almost because
Yeah.
it's like you're so dependable. Is there ever been a time where that's like really just like saved your butt? Like just like,
Yeah. It's definitely like in every show that I do, I get pretty tight with the music directors no matter what,
yeah,
just because like I speak their language.
right.
Um, but there was one time someone dropped out of a cabaret for like a new musical. And so the guy called me and was like, "Hey, Steph, I know you learn music really quickly. Like, can you learn the song and do it tonight?" I was like, "Okay, sure." And so I did it, and I had the sheet music in front of me, so I could just like sight read it whenever I
Right.
wanted. But like that's like easy, and that's fine.
Yeah. 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 It's fun. You're right. It is like a game.
It's
Like, do you
fun, yeah.
Yeah, amazing. Well, okay, moving on. So kind of it's still in the singer track, but I know you got really involved in a cappella at one point and there
Yeah,
you were like part of a group. What was that?
yeah. So it's called range music. They've kind of gone away from like the acapella. It used to be range acapella, and it was like mostly this group of kids from Syracuse, actually, mostly. And then they expanded. They like graduated and just started gathering members from not Syracuse, and then but it's some of the craziest vocalists and musicians ever. And at the time, I really, really needed that. Like, I I mean, I could talk about my singing journey forever, just because like when we knew each other, Sarah, like I was basically 90% a soprano, and I did not know how to belt healthily at all. Like that didn't come. Even now, like I'm still not sure if I'm belting correctly. I know I'm mixing correctly, but belting is still harder for me. So like it was just such a saving grace from doing predominantly classical musical theater things to like have this group kind of value me more as like a pop singer. And I got to like explore more of what I loved. I like to riff, and it took me a long time to realize that it's not because I'm showing off. That's just like my expression. That's my musical
Mm,
expression. Like it's easier for me to riff than to hold a note. like
Yeah, we like the movement is there from all your soprano training, so it's just like
exactly.
high, low, into pitch, right? Like you just are able to just navigate that so well.
Yeah, versus like holding a note, especially if it's in my chest. Like that took me a really long time to figure out how to do correctly through Hamilton, really, because like that is
You
just
had to.
uncomfortable for me. Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
it was really great to use all my choir skills, all my sight reading skills, like all these things, and find this community of people who just wanted to make good music, and also a community of people in New York who just do it. Like they didn't. These are people our age, and one of them is like an award-winning new composer, up and coming composer, and the other just like is now a Tony Award-winning producer too. Again, like our age people. Um, and like just and of course like some people don't do music theater at all, like some people are just like amazing singers who that's just their hobby, and it's really cool to see this group of people like just make art for no particular reason like like just make the music videos and put them on YouTube, and it was just so inspiring to me and empowering. We were like recording songs in their closet, like this was pre-pandemic, where I feel like after pandemic, like this became more not mainstream, but more people started to be more individual about these projects. But before the pandemic, it was not something I had too many examples of. Like
Right.
it was mostly like do a show, or like you don't really have any artistic outlets
Or be
otherwise,
sad. Do a show or be sad.
or just creatively constipated. Like there's really like no in between. So it was amazing, and I'm so inspired by those singers. Like it's actually wild what they can do.
Okay, amazing. Yeah, I remember hearing some clips of it and being like, "Oh my gosh, that's so awesome that Steph's doing that." But I think I was kind of creatively constipated, like you said before. And we're going to talk about how you like got I mean, we all leave CCM a little bit effed up as far as like
For
what is
sure.
happening, what is reality, who are we? Like we go there with the idea of like this is gonna fix me, this is gonna make me a star, and it's like
Right.
okay, no, you gotta. That's actually a lot of combing out. Is the real education comes the 5 years after you leave,
For sure.
and it's hard. It's a
Hmm.
hard education of life. New York just bitch slaps this out of you like but kind of with that, like how the creative constipation in quotes, how did you move, like what was kind of your mindset for any college people listening who or someone that's stuck in that mid-20s rut of the quarter
Hmm.
life crisis? How did you, I mean, I'm also putting words in your mouth, I don't know if I'm kind of
No, it's
speaking for
actually
myself.
like perfect. Yeah, it's actually perfect.
Yeah, like how did you move through that? Like what drew you to the acapella group? What drew you towards being lined up better to I know this might include Laura Henry, which who we're also going to talk about. I'm actually interviewing her later today, by the way.
Yes, amazing.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
So kind of like what was your trajectory? Where did you start
Uh-huh.
in when you were constipated? And like how did you move? How did you get through it and end
For
up where you
sure.
are?
It's great. So I'm going to give you a really long answer just because
Perfect. No, this
it
is
is
it.
a long answer. So basically, after college, I had relatively early, what other people would call successes, I guess. Like I made my Broadway debut. I was in another Broadway show, and then like I was technically living the life that other people told me was successful, but I was like severely depressed, and so and like I had a pretty bad eating disorder that like started in college, but just got worse and worse and worse. And like it became pretty out of control by my mid 20s. And so after War Paint, after my second Broadway show, I just like remember feeling like I had to just like fall, and you just need to like fall and like kind of just give up for a second. And so I did that for a year. And I was just very like, I finally worked on those demons that I had like shoved down for so long, and kind of tried to get to the root of like, because in my opinion, eating disorders are a whole nother thing, but like eating disorders to me are a symptom of a root problem.
Yeah.
And so I had to like kind of completely do a lot of therapy, a lot of energy work, a lot of just like talking to my family and leaning on people. I gained a lot of weight. I just like, I had so much acne for a year because I was just like doing horrible things to my body. But it was like the most amazing like rebirth. Like I read so many quotes like this, like so many Brene Brown books, like so many just like self-help books that um basically helped me think of a breakdown as a breakthrough, or like right before the breakthrough was a breakdown. And so I had to just kind of like, yeah, break down. And what I gained from that was this extreme self um, acceptance and love, even in a state that I was so ashamed of. But and then the other major thing that I gained from that was like I learned that I like really liked singing. Like I forgot that I liked singing so much because it was my moneymaker. But because it was my moneymaker and so much of my identity was wrapped around my voice, I really didn't improve for like 10 years. Like I only sang my soprano things. I tried to belt, but I couldn't. Like I would take so many voice lessons, but I just like could not break through the thing because I was too afraid to fail, I think. And so in that year of like kind of going through my depression and finally just like reworking all of it, I let myself sound so ugly just to like find these places. You have to sound horrible, like a dying duck a lot of the times, to then find placements. And then I like refound my love of music, refound my love of singing. I remember that singing before it was like my identity and my moneymaker was like my joy and my expression. And so I started to sing more. I remember I posted a video on my Instagram and it was like so scary for me, but it got like in my, for my tiny Instagram presence at the time, it like blew up in my world. And I was like, oh, like maybe I can actually sing pop music and maybe I can actually sing like non-soprano musical theater things. And that's when like I started to sing more with range. And after that, I think I did a show at Transcendence, where they kind of featured me as their bigger like pop singer, which was interesting again. And so right after that was my Hamilton audition, and it's just been a slow like back to finding myself like since then, and I'm so grateful for that time. So that's kind of my long answer into like how I found music again as a joy.
Mm-hmm.
And from then, like I actually just wanted to make art because it made me happy and because it was a way to express myself instead of like how I was supposed to sing it, what I was supposed to be expressing, like all of these supposed tos and shoulds and all these things that I had held on to for so long. It just kind of went away. And Laura Henry was a huge part of that for me. She really broke me down because I had so much people pleasing, like so
Oh my
much.
God.
I
And she'll do it.
we need to have a whole long combo about her because I can't wait to hear like
I want to hear, yeah, her episode's going to be lit. She'll deliver the truth, but always like, she's like
in such
firm
a
but kind.
compassionate way. Yeah, she speaks to every student exactly the way they need to be spoken to. So like I felt so taken care of and safe, but also like, whoa, I have some crazy cultural conditioning here. And so I like saw through my eyes for the first time, which was wild. Like I was never like looking through my eyes. I was looking outside in and not inside out. So that's a very long way to say like I had to kind of break down and then find why I was doing all of this in the first place. Like why did I even want to be on Broadway? Like why did I even
Right.
these goals that like someone else gave to me that I just decided was my own, like they were never my goals. I just like knew that I could sing and other people told me I was good at it. So I just did it. And now
Right.
it's changed into like, no, I want to because it feels right and it's like important to me. And um yeah, that's my long answer.
No, that's amazing and brilliant. And like, I think I say this sometimes, but like doing these podcast interviews is a little selfish because it's also for me because I like love listening to these answers because I think a lot of artists in their mid-20s or wherever age you're at, I mean, I'm sure it'll happen to other people in different parts of their life as well. Um, but the idea that like it does feel so isolating to be going through that. And I think everyone does go through it at some point of like, why the fuck am I doing
Yeah.
this? why am I doing this to myself? Especially at like a professional level. I've had that realization too, or noticed it a little bit prematurely doing my first professional job and being like, well, shit, this isn't exactly what I thought it was going to be. My rose colored glasses have been ripped off
Yes.
and I don't like it.
Yeah.
Right. And then, and then being like, wait, no. And then there's a lot of low self-worth that revolves around the acting community. And it's really easy to lose your footing as far as like, shit, like I don't know who I am anymore. I this was a sense of expression, and now damn it, like my whole existence is all about people pleasing and
Mhm.
subconsciously manipulating someone on the other side to like me.
Right.
And it can so easily down spiral. And I think it's interesting because the first season of this, if you ever listen to any of those episodes,
Mhm.
you'll hear you can hear the change because my attitude is a slightly more jaded as far as like I'm
Mhm.
like really looking for answers in some of these people, these guests. And in this one, it's like I feel like in my own growth, since I'm turning 30 this year, right? I'm kind of coming out of that. Yeah, I'm coming out of that now and being like, you know what? I am the problem. It is me, and I need to make it is me. I am the constant. That's the best realization actually to
Yes,
have.
it
Like
is. Yeah.
I I had that with dating, being like, everyone's mean to me. These men suck. And I'm like, wait a second, Sarah, you are the only consistent factor.
That's really funny. That's really funny. I mean, and you were right. Like, it was for sure a quarter life crisis. It was for sure like, I think I was 26 or maybe 27. I think 26. Yeah. 26 was the year of my like, can't do shit right now. Like, I don't know who I am. I don't know why I'm doing this. All of that happened. Yeah, for sure.
But that's okay. And I think especially with our conditioning from school, from just the industry of hustle, never stop, keep going. Like there's no room or there's no permission. It's almost like shameful to take that a little bit. To me, it was to take that time and be like, you know what? There was so much fear around giving up,
For sure.
giving up. And pandemic for me made me shut the fuck up and sit down and be like, listen, like you can't keep doing this.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that's so great that you took that
It's
time
like the
to
most important.
stop.
Yeah, I'm so grateful for that time. Like I wouldn't be who I am without that, and like I wouldn't have. I just feel like it was like that arrow. Like you have to like bring it back to then be able to shoot forward. And I just have so many metaphors for that now. Like I have a phoenix tattooed on my thigh now because of this idea of rebirth and like
Oh, I just got goosebumps. That was awesome.
it's just like constant phases of like, and this will happen again in our lives, I'm sure, like many times over, where we're just like, who am I now? Like, who am I now? Why am I doing this now? What do I want to do next? And I think that constant questioning is so important. Like, how are we supposed to be content in our lives without without being sure, or at least like trying to understand ourselves to our best abilities? I think that's like all that work of self actualization, self awareness, all of that is so undervalued, or just like on the outside in, it doesn't look like anything, but that's like the roots. Those are the roots that you don't have a tree without it. Like it will fall.
No.
You need that to do anything. So
Yeah, that's incredible. I love that analogy. I do a meditation of rooting down
mm,
every day where I feel like root or mycelium, if we're going to get really nerdy about it, like from the mushrooms and stuff, going through the earth and like attaching to the core and remembering that this work is our foundation.
mhm.
It's our integrity, it's our self-love, it's our core that radiates outward. And if we're not taking care of that flame, I mean, I used to like do this one meditation where I get really quiet and you tune into, I don't know, I was intuitively doing this. I don't know if you do this, if anyone does this, but I would like kind of try to feel, is my pilot light on?
Yeah.
Because that's, at a certain point, you get to be like, oh shit, I don't have anything left in my tank. I feel empty.
Mm,
There's no gas, there's nothing propelling you. So literally the flame was like out.
mhm.
Like I had to relight it with work to get it up, and then slowly over time it builds and builds, and now it's like raging and it's great, but
Yeah.
like but I love those analogies that you gave, and I kind of want to talk a little bit about the roots of, okay, how do I want to phrase this? I know the eating disorder thing. I mean, you could share with whatever you want
Yeah.
with that, but I also struggled with the same thing at the
Hmm.
same time frame as you
Hmm.
of like, and I agree that like for me it was like, okay, I need something to control.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's a control thing.
Hmm.
And, unfortunately at school, it was so perpetuated. And I think they're really trying to change that. I'm going to
I
have,
think so.
Karen Olivo on
Okay.
later, who's now a professor there.
Yeah.
But they um, have really tried to shift that mindset. And I think the industry is as well. Have you
For
noticed
sure.
a change in that as
Oh,
far
for
as like
sure.
inclusivity and okay.
Yes, it's really nice to see like body inclusivity in media these days, like in more mainstream media these days. I mean, like people like Lizzo, like and there was a time, especially in that one year, that I unfollowed a lot of people, even like acquaintances that were just like so skinny and just had so many like naked pictures all the time. And I would unfollow them or mute them. And I started following so many like body positivity accounts and I just like had to reframe my idea of what was beautiful. And like, that was, yeah, like you can use social media for things like that. I remember just like scrolling through, I think her name's Ashley Graham. I think that's
Oh
her
yeah,
name.
she's
She's
like
this
a model or something, right?
yeah, gorgeous, gorgeous plus size model. And I was just like, yeah, it was the eating disorder it's like so stigmatized. And I do think in today's world, like all of these things are coming to the surface, which is really wonderful. Like all these problems that we as millennials have like been dealing with is now coming out, like is becoming, I think we're all like talking about it more, which is really healthy. But yeah, it's a weird thing where I haven't done it in many months, but it's something that like every maybe like once a year or something, like I'll find myself doing and be like, what am I denying myself right now? Like
Mm.
what am I not wanting to feel? Like
Mm.
it tends to be that for me. And so it's become it's my relationship with it is now like I'm not ashamed of it. Talking to my boyfriend about it sometimes, like he gets really uncomfortable, like especially because I've done it like while with him, not obviously not in the same room. I'll tell him the next morning or something. And he'd be like, why did you do it? Like, why aren't you, what's wrong? And I was like, babe, like it's really at this point, um it's this strange, beautiful relationship that you kind of have to that I
Mm.
now have come to with it, to be like, this is now a symptom of something. And it's like, thank God that it's this and not something else, honestly, like something worse for me. Like eating disorders are horrible and it's self-destructive as fuck, right? But at the same time, like I'm not hurting anyone except for myself. And I can now I know that it means I'm in denial, or it
Mm.
means that I'm just trying not to feel something, just trying. It's not about my body anymore
Yeah.
for me. Like, um, yeah, I like thought it was about my body. Like you think it's because, especially at the time, I had gained a lot of weight, and I was like, maybe I thought it was just because I was so in my head fat that I was trying to like use the eating disorder to lose weight. But when like looking back on it, that wasn't it at all. It was like maybe 20% of it. The other 80% was just like not knowing who I was, like not being happy and not understanding like what I was supposed to do with my life at that
Mm.
point, just these huger, deeper issues. And I'm always very open to talk about it because I don't want it to have so much shame around it.
Mhm.
I read a lot of their literature about it at the time, and just trying to find like everyone else's experience. And even like towards the end of my healing, I read this book where this girl, it had a warning too, like a trigger warning for people with eating disorders, but she had pretty intense anorexia and bulimia in this book. But it was a really interesting book. And I remember I was still not healed enough to have read that without like wanting to do it right after. Like
Yeah.
as I was reading, I was like, oh, I should just not eat for like a couple days, or like, like I
Yeah.
should just like so it's interesting, and everyone's gonna, I mean, not everyone, hopefully, but
Yeah.
a lot of women, I think so many more women than are open about it have had them or like deal with body dysmorphia. And um, I hope that as our society continues, that we continue to embrace more body types. And yeah, but I do think it's more than just body stuff.
Oh,
Like,
absolutely. I think there's an element. I love that you said, thank you so much for sharing that.
yeah,
I would say that personally really appreciate what you said about turning it into a flag or a symptom, something positive actually, that is signaling something
mhm.
else. Like recently my mom got into a pretty serious car accident, but she's okay, but
Oh,
she's
okay.
recovering, and it was actually a miracle that she's alive, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
But yeah, she left relatively unscathed, but it was fascinating to realize
Mm,
that when my world for a minute, when we didn't know what was going to happen with
mhm.
her, if she was going to, you know, be totally fucked up or not, from, I mean, we had no information. She's getting life flighted and all that stuff. And
Right.
what was triggered from that
Yeah.
emotionally unstable experience? Because
Yeah.
like a freaking spark, it caught.
Yeah.
And something that I've been trying to put on mute, I think for me, I push it away a little bit more instead of
Mhm.
looking at it as a reflection of like my mental health at that time, especially like returning to the entertainment industry after having a different body after the pandemic. Like I
Yeah.
was back and
Yeah.
forth on birth control. I changed,
Oof.
I didn't start I was like working out like it was my full-time job before the pandemic, best shape of my life. Thought that I had cured the eating disorder there, when really it was just a different manifestation of it. I was
Yeah.
more confident, but granted, it was, what was at the cost of that? Oh, I'm working out 2 times a day and I'm only eating chicken and broccoli. That's actually not very stable or sustainable, right? Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
so it's cool that I can do that. We know we can do that. We prove that to ourselves that, like, okay, if I really need to do this for some kind of job or something, all right, I know how to get fit. I think it was more healthily managed, but it still was obsessed with the mental capacity that it took to think about that all the time. When is my next meal? How am I planning? What is the caloric value? Memorizing
Yeah.
all of the foods, knowing too much, right?
Too much. Yeah. You know every macronutrient of every single food. Like I could tell you probably exactly how many grams of like sugar, how many carbs, fat, protein of like so many foods
Right.
at this point. And thank God like now I've worked on ignoring those things
Right.
and just feeling how it feels in my body. So I can't quote it as easily, but there was definitely a point, and I
Mhm.
think it's probably something you can relate to. Like you we know exactly
Yeah, and
how
I
many like
yeah,
days and
and I wish I could forget it, and like, but
yes.
it's just like, okay, like it's a lot of like, I just love how you used it as like, oh, I'm noticing this is happening. Like when it was starting to flare from this accident and this emotional
Mhm.
instability, that was what I wanted to go to, was to immediately cut
Yeah.
myself down. You've gained too much weight. You know what was super
Mhm.
fucked up? I am going to share this because I think it's important. That I
Yeah.
saw, it was so messed up, but I saw my mother like after she was like home and like couldn't walk. You know what my
Mhm.
first thought was? I was like, "Oh my god, she looks so thin, but like maybe I should look thin." How fucking fucked up is that? Where
Yeah.
it just like immediately, that was like, it like broke my heart that that part of me was still in there, that after all of that, that was what came in. And then instead of being like, I mean, yeah, it's fucked up. I said that a bunch of times, but instead of being like, how dare you think that, right? Like kind of
Mhm.
looking at that actually, which I've identified as the child in me. It's the 12-year-old
Mhm.
child or the 11-year-old child
For sure.
that was activated when I was that young. Um,
Yeah.
and I comforted that part of me because that's really what
Yeah.
it needed. It was my mom's not okay. And
Yeah.
it's gonna be okay. Like that's
Yeah.
the voice that was coming out. So anyone that struggles with this and then it flares up, any of the listeners, just know that it's like, for me at least, it is, I'm just accepting that it is this lifelong dance, kind of like what you mentioned.
For sure.
But
Yeah.
you have a loving relationship with that part of you, whatever age it was when it was
Mhm.
activated. Um,
Yeah.
but
I love what you said too about the like there's so many ways I think about this too. Like we are both like the parent and the child, right?
mhm,
And oftentimes like the parent side of us could be abusive towards the side of us, or towards the child in us, or it could be spoiling the child in us. Like we have to kind of find this balance between like being a healthy parent and a child to ourselves. And often like, for me too, body thinness was idealized like before I can even remember.
Oh
So
my God.
like
In the 90s,
obviously that,
2000s, like what?
oh my God, they're tiny. They're so little. But and another way I think of that too is like um it's from this book, and I can't remember which book it was. I feel like it's an Eckhart Tolle or something, but there's all of our thoughts, like who are you, right? Like who am I? And there's all the thoughts, and we often think that we are the thoughts that we have, like, man, she looks so thin, like that's not, but that wasn't you. Like the person who we are is a person listening to those thoughts and like receiving those thoughts. And
Mm,
so that's something that was a really interesting distinction for me that like was so necessary. I was like, wow, I have been listening to these really destructive thoughts for so long. And like thoughts are something we can slowly control in a way with meditation practice and other things, but also just recognizing that those thoughts are not who we are.
right.
Who we are, the people listening to those thoughts,
Mm,
and being affected by those thoughts.
right. That's amazing. I actually have never thought of it that way. So that was so super helpful to like
Yeah.
we are simply, I mean, they talk about observing the thoughts. I've heard that a lot, but like actually
Mhm.
embodying that neutral perspective. And I've done like
Yeah.
soul energy work, like that our soul is actually
Sure.
pretty just like lovingly neutral. It's like, and then it's like, okay, we are so conditioned, and taking accountability for that conditioning and being like, you
Yeah.
know what? I'm actually responsible for how I feel about myself,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that can be actually super empowering. And this kind of brings me to another really deep question, because that's what we do here,
Yeah.
about embodying. I mean, these are two kind of separate big questions, but embodying yourself as an actor, which I know took a little bit of time for you, and
For sure.
embodying and embracing yourself as a singer, and understanding.
Oh my God, such a big question.
Such a big question. I know. I'm sorry. Let's start whichever one you want to start with, or
Yeah.
whatever one's more powerful to you. Whatever you want to say to that.
No, I'm happy to. I'm very open book. But I'll start with the acting one just because we haven't talked too much about that in general. Acting, yeah, as I said, is something I felt behind on from middle school all the way till my mid 20s. I had always felt like a fraud as an actor. I just didn't know how to do it. Like I just didn't know how to do it, and I couldn't even really recognize more than just like the average person, like what was good acting versus like I didn't know. I
Right.
I could you could every we all kind of know when we like watch Viola Davis or like we watch Meryl Streep, like, oh, that's like true genius acting. But in general, like I just didn't know. And I felt like a fraud as an actor, but I also felt like a fraud as an artist overall. Even though like I was a professional artist, technically speaking, like making my living on Broadway. And that ties into my singing too. But acting wise, I think my whole personality had to change first of like of like just uh first of all, vulnerability, as Laura Henry says, is an artist's biggest strength, right? So like using or our biggest tool, like that is something that obviously it's become more mainstream again with Brene Brown and people like that, but that's not something that until pretty recently has been like a positive trait. Vulnerability has been associated with like getting hurt, right? Like being a victim of something. And again, Laura Henry made me actually like know how I felt about every situation in the moment with Meisner training, right?
Mm.
Like I couldn't even tell you how I felt in my day to day. Like I could not even tell you, like I could tell you I was happy or sad, but like I knew how I was supposed to feel always, but I never could genuinely tell you like, this made me immediately feel this, and I could like immediately tell you what that response was without any social conditioning on it. So that was like a huge thing, because then in scene work that translates, because without the social conditioning of it and you just put the character work on it, like with all those circumstances, you use your vulnerability, you're just wide open, your heart's just wide open to feel things, and you just respond truthfully instead of like what what a quote unquote normal person is supposed to respond as. Like with those circumstances, with all your like character homework and research, it's like oh, I am angry right now. Like, and someone else in the same scene might be like super sad or super happy in certain moments. But like my genuine response, mixing Stephanie and Eliza together, like I am angry as fuck right now. Like
Mm-hmm.
I think acting has been just such an amazing journey for me. It's somewhat new, like it's like I don't know, 4 or 5 years old now for me, and um, it's cool because the role of Eliza has been super challenging in terms of like having to feel pretty traumatic things 8 times a week. And I could not have done that without like, for the listeners, after graduating from a BFA in musical theater, I took like 4 years of acting classes with Laura Henry, with other people too, to finally feel like I understood the skill set of acting. And
Mm-hmm.
other people, it comes more naturally. Of other people, like everyone's on a different journey. But for me, that was I didn't really know how to do it until like many years of training after college. But at this point, I'm really happy with I've honestly impressed myself a lot this year. Like I can't believe how I would say like 95% of the time I am feeling those circumstances fully, and in the show. Like I'm feeling my son's death. I'm feeling being cheated on. I'm feeling meeting the love of my life as a teenager. Like I'm feeling all these things pretty much fully. And in an 8 show week, that's
It's a lot.
really hard. And so I'm really impressed with myself. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of it is just being super open to your emotions. Like I'm such a crier at this point. I don't really stifle any emotion anymore. And that was another lesson in acting class, of course. Like there's no such thing as a negative emotion. Like every emotion is there to guide you. It's like a compass, and it's also like they're there to be expressed. Like when you express them, you let them go instead of like holding on to it.
Mm-hmm.
So that was another thing of just being like, oh, emotions are really beautiful. And like I didn't even know that one of my biggest skill sets was feeling emotions fully whenever I needed to. Like that wasn't even something I knew I could do
It's like a
before.
gift, and people don't know that until you actually let it go. And I think people
Yeah,
pleasing and manipulating yourself is like the quickest way to be out of
yeah.
it from an actor, and it's like, and it's hard because like we were trained at our BFA. Like, I mean, Aubrey literally once told me, like, what, why are you crying? You're not going to get what you want. And I was like, dude. And like that, like stifled me for a while. Cause like
Yes.
I don't remember, you remember me, but I cried everything. So
So it's so emotionally accessible. Like I just think it's so beautiful.
thank you. Well, it took Laura to be like, that's beautiful. For someone to like literally say, it's okay, that's a skill, that's actually wonderful. For me to be
Yeah.
like, oh, okay.
It's for sure a skill. And also like I think in this things are changing again now, but like I do think it's an overly masculine
Mm,
world. Like
yeah.
we like overly value masculine values. And so like I think people label emotions as feminine, which is just not true. It actually makes me really sad for men sometimes. Just like toxic masculinity is really sad to me actually, because like all the emotions that they just like don't are too afraid to feel. It's really sad. But I think like I kind of labeled a lot of emotions as weaker, as like unhealthy, as like all these things. And now I'm like, no, these things are beautiful. And like my superpower is feeling them. Like, whereas in normal society, like it is not a luxury that many people get, especially in their jobs, is like the ability to like feel these emotions fully and like express them,
Well,
you
that's
know?
often why they come to see something we're in or a movie
Exactly.
or
Yeah.
music, because that gives them permission to feel them even for that
Exactly.
brief, because they get to hide behind our
I think that,
expression.
like art gives people a safe place to feel these things that they feel. Like I think it's such a beautiful thing that artists do.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really, and once, and I think that integrity that you've talked about taking ownership and pride around your true gifts, like knowing the truth, and the truth is
Mhm.
always centering around love, and and actually accepting that as part of reality, your reality, um I think clearly shows like your health, and like your, I like the reason I bring people on, I'm like, look at this success. I think it's a direct relation success. I mean, also, what is that, right? Like, but
Right,
like,
right.
look, okay, these people might have what you want, quote unquote,
Uh-huh.
but like, how are they really feeling? And are they really happy and healthy? And like, I'm very selective with who I like ask, because specifically I want someone like you that's like really done the work and like gone
Mhm.
through it. And then, also it's like, I don't really know, but
I'm
like
still going through it. Yeah.
yeah, it's like a never ending thing, right? It's not a done deal, but
Right.
it's so just beautiful hearing you talk about that transition and that movement. I mentioned one of my other questions was like kind of finding yourself as a singer.
Yes. Yes.
And I kind of want to talk about that and how that bridged into not only like writing your own music and singing and
Yeah.
expressing authentically, but then coming in with the acting as a theater. How did you do that? Like how did
Yes.
those come together for you?
For sure. Oh my gosh. Okay, the singing journey is really fun too because, um, yeah. So as I said earlier, I had a lot of classical training, and I just had a lot of exposure and admiration to so many different genres. Like I had this friend in high school who's kind of a cousin, um, who was like a music genius, but he gave me so much exposure to jazz music, to
Ooh.
like all the jazz greats. And so for a while, I wanted to be a jazz singer, and then obviously, pop music is just like pop music, so we're gonna hear it all the time. And my oldest sister would show me her favorite artists, and she is a music lover. Like that woman listens to albums, feel things fully, belts everything. Like it's amazing. Um, and then I also have this musical theater influence. So actually, finding my voice was really tricky because I kind of feel like a bit of a jack of all trades when it comes to those genres. Like
Well, look at that. Where are you at? The jack of all
and like you could do the negative spin on it, which is like, what is it?
It's master of it's not master of
Master
nothing.
of none.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but actually the full phrase is better than master of one, but no one ever finishes it. That's the full phrase.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that's why we're here to be like,
Cool. Good to
this
know.
yeah, this is actually fair. So that's the whole point of the
Yeah.
podcast. Anyway, can continue.
But it's also cool because then, like, as I was writing my music, I was like, I have no idea what my voice wants to do. Like, I had no clue how I wanted to sing. And so, even this album, like, I'm so proud of it. It's our debut album, but it is our debut album. So, like, I can't wait for our music to get better and, like, for my voice to feel more comfortable and all these things. But I learned that, like, the way that I sing is unlike anyone I've ever heard, which is like until you love yourself, it's a bad thing. But then once you love yourself, it's like amazing. Like that's what makes you special.
Mhm.
It's like anything that makes you different is like amazing. Um, so I'm learning that like when I sing on my album, I'm like using all different aspects of my voice, like the high stuff, the riffy stuff, the sustained stuff. There's like I'm trying really hard not to sound musical theatery, which is something that I never even thought I would say because I never thought I sounded musical theatery in general. It was so funny. My boyfriend was like, "Yeah, like she has all these pop soundings, but of course musical theater influence, but blah blah blah." And I was like, "I'm musical theater influence," and I was like, "Oh yeah, I guess I've done it for 10 years. Like
Yeah.
I guess so." Um, but it was really cool. Like to Hamilton was a huge part of finding my chest voice and finding a lot more control there, which then just expanded my voice times two because I really only felt comfortable in my head voice before that. And writing the music was it was a really long and interesting journey. Like half of the songs, Voltaire wrote the beats. He's a producer of the group, so he would like make the beats for first, and then I would find lyrics and music to it. And then the other half of the songs, like I wrote the music and the lyrics first, and then he got the beat around it. And so every song is pretty different because of that. Like we're so experimental in this album, trying to figure ourselves out. Um, but yeah, as a singer, I'm just a little sprinkle of everything, and it's great because I feel pretty diverse. And then in other ways, sometimes I'm like, I don't sound this enough, I don't sound that enough, but that's just not the point. Like it's me. It's like I sing this in a way that I don't know anyone else who will sing it the way that I want to sing it.
Right. It's like, and it's interesting. I'm a believer of like whatever you're really feeling about yourself, not even just thinking, but like how you genuinely feel about
Hmm.
your voice is the reflection that you're going to get back, because that's what you're going to pick up on. And so like I'm kind of still at the phase of like, okay, like I've worked so long to like be good at everything to just maybe somehow fit, as opposed to like, you know what, I now function after like learning how to the human voice works and like actively teaching different voices. It's like, oh, like there's so many things that weren't explained to us taking voice lessons, of like, oh wait, like really, that's it, like just something
Yeah.
as resistance or thickness or like understanding, oh, chest is just talking. That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
What? Like, and you study for 10 years and you expect, or to learn that like you don't need that much air in your chest. Oh, like if you have like too much air moving. But anyway, all that being said is like I spent so much time being able to do everything that to a certain degree, it's like I love hearing you say like when you learn to love yourself, it'll be way easier to like identify your sound because it's cool. It's the only thing that you can do easily that doesn't sound like other people. And
Yeah.
that in itself makes it enough.
We're going to take a little pause from our interview with Stephanie Park to actually show you a clip from one of Saffron Lips' songs, Fire to My Air, from the album of the same title. Hope you enjoy it.
Yeah, you love about me, baby. What scares you the most? I do what I want. I say what I feel. Yeah, you love my authenticity. You think they'll chase this glow. You know you're not wrong. They do what I deal. But what you're missing, baby, is that you're the one I crave. I do as I desire, and baby, it's you until the grave. You're what I want. Dance with me, baby. You got me caught. Fire to my air.
After hearing a clip of this music, I went back and listened to the whole album because Steph's voice is just so clean. It's so good. And the music that she's making with her partner in the group Saffron Lips, I can't recommend highly enough. Please check it out. We'll link more of her information in the show notes. But without further ado, let's get back to our conversation with Stephanie Park of Hamilton and Saffron Lips.
Have you noticed a reflection of people being more accepting of your sound now that you yourself have
yeah.
accepted it?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like even hearing people like react positively to my voice and the new things that I've been doing is like is like exciting and crazy to me. It's unexpected.
Yeah.
There's a difference between like a vocalist and a singer, right? A vocalist is like technique, right? A vocalist can like technically sing whatever they need to sing, right? A singer is an artist, and a singer is a combination of a vocalist and an artist to me. So like you don't have to have a great voice. You don't have to have great technique. I mean, and what is a great voice even? Like what even does that mean, right? Like it just means you like it, really. And if you like it, someone else likes it. If you have it, someone else needs to hear it too, right? So a singer to me is just like someone who expresses truthfully through music. That's just how they do it. And that's different than a vocalist, right? And then also when it comes to technique, like sometimes you can learn this, you can hear the same lesson over and over, but like you're not ready to receive it.
Right.
So like I didn't really know how to breathe correctly, even though I've been taking voice lessons since I was in elementary school. And I've always learned the correct way to breathe, but I didn't really get it until I was 27.
But I also want to say, and I say this to some of my students that come in, that Steph does know how to breathe or she'd be dead. So I do want to say, wait a second. This is teacher coming out. That actually, this is what I've learned, having studied with a bunch of different teachers just like you, and then finally coming to like, oh wait, I actually like anatomically as a vocalist, like, right?
Mm-hmm.
Wait, like kind of having the understanding of like, wait, some things are a different math problem, right?
Yeah, yeah.
No, not every inhale is going to be necessary. They're not the same. You can't, the
Right.
inhale you're going to take for a large aria phrase is going to be different than the inhale you're going to take singing Burn, right? And I think
Right.
not enough people say that. So I
Mhm.
I think that you do know how to breathe clearly.
I guess it was more that I was letting too much breath out. Like I wasn't using the breath correctly. That's
Yeah.
what it was. And even though I'd been taught how to use it my whole life, but I wasn't. I for some reason my vocal journey I wasn't ready to receive the lesson until like my later 20s, which is
Gotcha.
interesting. Just crazy, like sometimes you hear the same sermon over and over and over, but you don't. It doesn't click until like you are ready to hear it, right? You're ready to like actually receive it. So I don't know.
Just out of
Patience.
curiosity, what was what just, and for a singer, like this is so good for singers to hear because there's so many of them that are like, I want to bow, I want to bow, I want to bow. And they just like can't. Some
Yeah.
people, like you said, they're not ready to receive it. They will be when they're ready, right? What
Mhm.
do you remember what made that click for you? Like, do you remember? Like,
Yes. I think the biggest click for me was being willing to sound horrible for a long time. Like being willing to like, right? It's like, like trying to like figure out my nasality, just trying to figure it out. And obviously I had some really great voice teachers too who like, but I think the only way I learned how to belt or like mix all these things technically healthily was by being allowing myself to fail a lot first. Like just as someone who identifies as a singer or like who's way too much of my identity was wrapped up in singing, it was really I just like would not allow myself to sound bad for so long. But it's not bad. It's just like, you're and anything you're gonna fall before you can do it, right? Like
right.
you have to fail in order to then succeed. Like a failure is not a failure. It's just like a part of the journey. So in my head, I just had to like keep trying over and over again, trying this placement, trying that, trying, like seeing what hurt, seeing what didn't. How can I
Yeah.
make this ugly sound not ugly? How can I make this like overly technical thing sound not technical? Just like all
Yeah.
this practice, practice, practice. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, like get out of your head. What is this? Just this sound. And I
Mhm.
think that's a big thing with singers is like, especially for you having a beautiful voice, being told your whole life, you're the pretty singer, you're the beautiful voice, you have the soprano. Then it's like your idea of singing also becomes like the definition of what it is. So it's like, oh, I always must sound beautiful.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, but like to belt, I mean, belting is actually hideous.
Totally. Yeah, it's actually like really ugly just alone, like without accompaniment and shit. It's just like ugly.
Right. And to do it healthily, there is, and I love that you said, okay, when does it hurt? Not that I'm condoning people to hurt themselves, but
Yeah.
there is an element of you have to test
Yeah.
the boundary. You have to jump the cliff. And
Mhm.
you jumping the cliff once, just calling, seeing what it is, that experimental phase, as long as you don't overdo it, you got to try something.
Right.
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 And if you're a singer that's afraid of jumping the cliff or trying what the teacher wants you to do, then you're
Mhm.
just holding yourself back, right? You're
Right.
not even looking over the edge. I think so many classical singers, especially, are so afraid. There's so much fear
Yeah.
because it's pumped into like, there's these like cardinal rules of singing, and that's actually not true,
Right.
you know?
Yeah. And also like it's your vocal cords. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure they're muscles.
Yeah.
Right? Like so
Mhm.
so just like any muscle, like you're gonna have to train it. Like you're not gonna be able to sing certain things like obviously the first time. Like just like you're gonna do bicep curls, like obviously you're gonna have to start with 5-pound weights. And then like you can slowly go up and you're gonna slowly get stronger. And every time you get stronger, the only way you get stronger is by going until failure, right? Like only
Right.
until you can't lift that weight anymore is your muscle gonna grow. So like same thing with your voice. Like it's gonna be you have to be like patient and slow with it, but just train it and practice and treat it like a muscle that you're working out at the gym, which also includes stretching it, which also includes resting it, all these, the whole balance of it all. But yeah, it was the vocal journey has been, and I'm still definitely going through it. Like
Yeah. We all are, always.
I'm about to do, I'm finishing up my contract. My next contract, I'm about to belt something like a little more intensely. And that is something that scares me right now. So I'm already like in voice lessons trying to figure it out. Like it's like this nonstop journey of trying to like grow and expand if you want to do it. If that's what brings you joy, if that's your creative expression, whatever.
Right. And if it's not, if you're happy, I think that's the other thing is like I teach voice lessons, I teach technique for people that to have a healthy balance, to have somewhere to return to so that for longevity. But in the end, I think it's also important for people to know that this is my school of thought that I've been, kind of that's worked for me, but like not every style is freaking balanced, right? It's not, you're not going to have a healthy, perfect mix for everything. And it's uninteresting actually to have a really, like a totally connected, even like perfectly technical sound is boring.
Right.
Like,
right.
so
sound hard, it's not that exciting.
right. And it's like, how do we, it's really more about finding your balance, coming back to square one, and then being able to come off of it for your expression, for your artistry, and returning to neutral.
And like you teach technique. I mostly do coachings more than like lessons because
like acting coaching.
Oh yeah. Well, I like to do like vocal coachings with singers who like are still trying to figure out their musicality, or like that's really fun for me because like usually I work with people who like have great voices and they're like working on audition, and I'm like I take what they're doing and just like validate it, and then it's crazy how much that expression is like alive, like more awakened. It's like I love what you did there, just like I love that nuance, keep it. Or like, what if you do this nuance that you did earlier? Like, this is the way your voice likes to move, so let's show that off, right? Like, your voice, your tone is beautiful, so let's show that off instead of like trying to do a riff when maybe flexibility is not your greatest strength and it's not something it'll make you feel insecure in the audition. So let's show off your strength instead of like working on your weakness just for this audition, like something like that. I like love that musicality.
Steph, I might have to hit you up for a good, because it's like so many. I don't know, like you have such a clear. We speak the same language in terms of vocal understanding of lessons. We had the same voice teacher, I think. Did you have Karen?
No, I didn't have Karen. I had Mike Ruckles, or now I have Mike Ruckles in New York.
Oh, you have Mike Ruckles, but in school. I took from Mike Ruckles for a while as well. I'm still part of his.
Oh, you did,
yeah. Wait, did you at school? Did you have Karen, or did you have Kimberly?
School, I had Kimberly.
Oh, okay, all right. Yeah. Well, still, like,
it's great. I just didn't know how to receive it. Like that's
right.
Just receive it, correct?
Right. But anyway, okay, amazing. Well, we're gonna wrap it up here because I know you got to go. You have a busy schedule. You're enjoying your time with your family.
Yes.
I want to. It's just anything you'd like to add or plug here in the last moments. I'll link everything that you're involved in down below for people to see. But just anything that you'd like to tack on, or like closing messages for any artists or people.
Man, it's rough. I think the main thing that I think like I will always say over and over and like will never quite listen to myself is like, do not compare yourself to anyone else, because like, no matter what, your individuality is what makes you important, and just life is not a race, right? Like I think artists, especially who are professional, we can't help but compare ourselves, and like it's just never enough, right? Like I am not happy with where I'm at in my career. I will never be I hate this phrase, but I will never be satisfied because it's not as good as someone else, right? Where it's like
never be satisfied.
Yeah. I hate myself for saying it, but I really am kind of never satisfied. But I think the main thing I want to say is like, don't look left and right. You can look backwards sometimes, but just stay in your lane and understand that like timing is so individual. Like it's just so individual, and someone, if Broadway's your goal, like someone could be on Broadway since they were a teenager, or someone could like not make their debut until they're in their 40s and then win a Tony, right? Like there's no such thing as like one track. So please just do not compare yourself to anyone else. Like it's so hard, and I say it over and over because I need to hear it over and over, honestly.
Yeah. Well, and it's hard because we're told all the time, what's your type? How can I make sense of you? And it's like, actually, you can go fuck yourself because I don't really care how you make sense of me.
Right.
It's not really my business. Okay.
Yeah.
You do what you want. I'm going to be here thinking about what I need to do. If you want to share that information, don't. Like that's really what it's and I'm fascinated. I think some artists are coming to that, but like we'll see how it changes,
Sure.
Anyway, thank you so
Gosh, this is such a joy. We could talk forever.
All right, you have a wonderful day.
You too. This is so great.
Thank you so much.
And that wraps up our conversation with Stephanie Park. Thank you guys so much for listening. I just love connecting with old friends, especially friends that have been so clearly reflecting on life and growing in their own way and are so generous in sharing their story and how they've gotten to where they are. So big thanks to Steph for coming on, and I really hope you guys check out her projects that are all linked in the show notes, including her website, her links to her music, Saffron Lips, and check her out on the road in Hamilton. If you haven't done so already, don't forget to leave us a 5-star rating and review. This helps get the podcast out to a wider audience so people can keep hearing these inspirational conversations and the journeys of artists as they find their way into discovering whatever their heart leads them to. You can also follow us on Instagram at jackofalltrades_podcast. Give us a like and a follow for more information on our guests, as well as updates and all kinds of fun facts about everyone that we bring on the show. And finally, we'd love connecting with our audience. Send us an email at the address jackofalltradespodcast2020@gmail.com. You can also send us some updates if you yourself or if you know someone that would make an excellent guest on this podcast and does a lot of different things, or perhaps is even a master in the thing that they pursue and is very interesting to talk to. Send their information over. We'd love to connect with people. And with all that information down, I really hope that you guys have a wonderful rest of your week. And until next time, goodbye.